Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church. My name is Jon Luopa. I'm one of the ministers here with my good colleague, Beth Chronister, and offering you this service this morning. It seems that only now we are beginning to see the full face of what our challenges are before us with this coronavirus, and it seems like it will both continue to unfold in the next several months and may even get a little worse. We knew this on some levels, but it's being confirmed by experts, which means that it's all the more important for us to find ways to be of comfort and consolation and support to each other. And we certainly do hope that these online services and the many other programs we are providing during the week are some means to providing those things for us as we cope with what we have before us. If you've been following the e-news and the Gateway, you've noticed that we have decided to keep the building closed during the month of April, and it may need to go a little bit beyond that, but at least at this point for April, the building will continue to be closed, but that doesn't mean that UUC is closed by any stretch. All of our programs, fortunately, have been able to continue through technology, and staff continue to work hard to reach out to the many members of those groups so that they might participate in their activities. The care team is ramped up and ready to respond to pastoral needs as they arise in our midst, and everyone at UUC is still working hard to provide the kind of services and programming that you count on. That being said, of course, our financial commitments continue and bills need to be paid, and without the regular reminder of gathering together, sometimes it's easy to forget that we do have obligations we need to meet. And so for those of you who can, and we understand times are difficult now, we graciously and eagerly accept your generosity in helping us keep UUC afloat and to keep it as a beloved community. Given the governor's latest suggestion that we not meet together in groups, it means that we are not able to put together the worship service in our space. And so we are this week beginning to provide it for you from a number of different places. And each week is an experiment for us, and we thank you for your patience. And I want especially to thank David Owens and Byron Christad for their unflagging support here. Dwight Beckmeyer, who has recorded music for us in these services, and beginning this week, Jenny Spence, one of our soloists, accompaniment to the singing so that you can sing robustly at home, and we hope that you will do that. So let's begin our service this morning. We come to this time and place to rediscover the wondrous gift of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, and to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair and all her people one. A dream, let's make it real. I invite you now, as you are able, to stand or sit as we sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land by every tongue.
Our story this morning comes from Spain. We know that much about it from an unknown source, but it's actually a variation on a very popular and known story, even for those who did not have a formal religious background. And I think you'll recognize it as I begin to tell it. There once lived a man named Peter, who was well known in his community for his kindness. And one day he was traveling along a mountain trail when he heard a cry for help. And so Peter immediately searched the area and he found a young person lying at the edge of a cliff as if he were about to die. "Help, help, help," said the young man. "Oh my God, help me. I was traveling along this road and 3 robbers came and attacked me and beat me and stole my wallet and my camera and all my possessions." And so Peter got off his horse and went over to the young person and gave him some water from a flask and then helped him get up on his horse. And as soon as the young fellow got up on Peter's horse, he rode away. He took off. He took off. Now, Peter, who knew this mountain pass very well, knew a shortcut down the side of the mountain. And so he ran down the shortcut until he caught up with this young fellow who was riding his horse. And when he saw them, he yelled, "Stop, stop, stop." And the horse, recognizing the voice of his master, stopped. "Look," said Peter to this young guy, "if you want this horse, I will give it to you as a gift. I don't want you to become a thief on my behalf. It makes no difference to me whether you give me this horse as a gift or not, because as soon as I get to the next town, I'm going to sell this horse." "Oh, don't do that," Peter said. "Don't do that. Oh my gosh, everybody in the next town knows me. And if they see my horse and I'm not on it, they will assume that you..." Peter yelled, "Stop, stop." And the horse, recognizing the voice of his master, stopped right there. And when Peter caught up with him, he said to him, "Look, you can have this horse as a gift. I don't want you to become a thief on my behalf." And the young guy said, "I don't care whether you give it to me as a gift or not. I don't really care. When I get to the next town, I'm going to sell this horse." "Oh, don't do that," Peter said, "because everyone in the next town knows me. And if they see you sitting on my horse and I'm not there, they're going to wonder how you got that horse. And they're going to assume that you did something to me, and they are going to do something to you." "Well, why do you care what they do to me?" said the young guy. "I don't care what they do to me, for crying out loud. It's my life. It shouldn't make any difference to you if anybody does something to me." And Peter said, "I don't want them to hurt you. I don't want them to do that. No. Look, if it would make a difference, I can write you a note that says, 'I gave you this horse as long as you don't tell anyone what has transpired between us.'" And the young man said, "The world is full of fools, and you are the biggest damn fool I have ever met. For crying out loud, I don't care if you give me a bill of sale or a note about this horse, but you know, I'm a little worried about all this, and are you trying to trick me?" And Peter said, "No, there's no trick here. None at all. But if people hear the way you treated me, they may hesitate to help a stranger. And that stranger might be someone who really needs help. And that stranger might actually turn out to be you someday." And the young man stared at Peter and got very quiet. And then the tears started rolling down his cheeks. And he said, "You know, my father was a thief, and my grandfather was a thief, and they both ended up in prison. And they taught me everything I know. And they didn't care one way or the other, whether I lived or whether I died. But if I had had a father like you, my life would have turned out differently." And Peter said, "It's never too late for us to try to undo the damage that's happened to each of us earlier in our lives." If you want, you can come and live with me. And the young man said, I will. And he got off the horse, and Peter got up on the horse, and they walked to the next town, and they lived together for many years. And the young man became an honest man. Here ends the story.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Friends, I invite you now into a spirit of prayer and meditation as we take a moment to quiet and center ourselves, seeking that which renews us as a people and as persons. In the last week, I've had opportunity to work through a number of files and boxes and looking at materials that I've assembled and written over the years. And I found this prayer that I wrote 32 years ago. Let us hold in mind all that renews and redeems, strengthens and preserves, loves and affirms us into life abundant. There will be opportunities and moments every day when my opportunity will come to show courage. Not sometime in the future, when I am a little better entrenched in my position, nor when I have a feeling of greater security, nor when I have more poise. But now, in this moment, there will be not one moment, but innumerable moments during each day when I might exercise patience. Not sometime in the future when I am less tired, nor when there are fewer annoying things to disturb me, but now in this moment, which is the only one I can fully know. Sometimes during a day, there will be an opportunity to see some gesture of nature which has beauty. Not in the future, when I have time to look for it, nor when it shall be so obvious that I need exert no effort to find it. Not in the future, when I shall find it in some far-off place, but here and now, and right before me. And surely there is not a day when, if I choose, I cannot create for those about me some hopeful moment. Not in the future, when I shall feel happier and can do it more easily, nor when I have more resources to fashion hopeful things, nor when I have developed deeper skills to express my hopefulness, but now from the meager materials at hand. And there is ever the opportunity for acceptance of the world as it is, for charity and compassion, not in the future, when the current bitterness is allayed, nor when I have withdrawn from the complexities of life, but in the now, when I am in the midstream of a turbulent, surging, and at times almost engulfing life. Now is the time for beauty, for compassion, for charity, for hopefulness, for love. To these imperfect words, we add the silent intentions of our hearts. So may it be. Amen.
Before we begin the sermon portion of our worship, I wanted to acknowledge that there have been harmful and hurtful things, interrupting things written in our chat this morning from people outside of our community who are wishing to do damage. And, you know, there's so much we can't control these days. And we'll just add that in part to the list. We can't control how other people show up. We can't control if other people are up to mischief. But we can control closing our chat. We can control moving it off the screen. One of the things that I'm reflecting on this morning is the paradoxes of right now. And, you know, if the internet is not one of the great paradoxes as a place like right now, gathering in Zoom together, even as we are all in our separate homes, that we can still remain connected, can inspire and support each other, then it can also be a place where harmful words are thrown. And so I'd ask you to take a breath with me now. Shaking off the feelings of strangeness, and if you're feeling rattled right now. And coming into the shared space that we create when we are together and worship, even if from a distance, even if it's imperfect, even if it is not how we would wish. Here we are. I'd like to share with you a poem to begin by the Reverend Lynn Gardner. It is entitled Joy. I don't need to tell you that this world is hard and getting harder. We thought it would be better than this, more sensible, more neatly worked out, more righteous, more according to our impeccable analysis of what righteousness should look like. And yet here we are. No good pretending it isn't both a slog and a crisis, which is to say, wearing on every last nerve. And still, when you least expect it, you find yourself ambushed by joy, who, tail whipping and ears slipped back to her head, launches herself into your lap, leaving you breathless and covered in kisses. Oh, good morning, friends. In these strange and trying times, it is good to be together. From wherever you are joining this morning, in whatever state of being you woke up in, and wearing whatever comfy clothes to couch church you might have on, welcome to this gathering of hearts, minds, and souls. Even from an appropriate physical and social distance, I hope that you feel the support of this community and of a greater love that holds you, that holds us all. So has it really only been a few weeks since we were last able to gather in our chapel? So much has changed and unfolded, and as I mentioned earlier, so much of it out of any one person's control in this collective effort to slow a virus that threatens so many and so much. And as the poet said, this can wear on every last nerve, can be taxing, all this change and uncertainty and adaptation, unfamiliarity. And I imagine that for many of you, this past week has included some discomfort as well as struggle. Personally, I have been finding that I both need meditation to calm my anxieties more than ever, and also that when I am able to slow down my thoughts, Tears often follow. These are hard times, my friends, and I witness the spiritual strength it takes to face each day. One of the questions I often ask in pastoral counseling when someone comes to me in a time of great struggle is to ask, is there a time in your life when you experienced something similar? Tell me a story. Tell me a story about when the rug was taken out from underneath you, or when you felt like you were left sitting in the rubble. What helped you through that time? Who was there? And what did you learn about yourself and about life? Though I'm pretty sure that most of us have not experienced exactly what we are collectively facing right now, I do know that many of you have lived through difficulties and experienced pain or loss so deep that maybe you did not believe you would survive it, and maybe that moment is right now. And yet somehow, something within you keeps holding on, kept holding on. Life did not give up or abandon you, but tenaciously kept moving, inviting and changing until a new day dawned. Several years ago, I sat with a dear friend. Through a wrenching time, one we both feared he would not survive. And he introduced me to a verse in the Hebrew Psalms, Psalm 30, verse 5. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And these are words we would repeat back and forth to one another, interspersed with singing hymns that soothed and fortified. And a new day did eventually dawn for my friend, though the nights he endured left their indelible mark on his life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Where do these ancient words ring true in your own story? When I ask people to share about a time in their past when they encountered struggle, it is to help someone to locate their own history of resiliency and to reconnect with what your natural wisdom and spiritual tools that you've developed, what are they? And to feel in one's body that nothing lasts forever. So what's in your toolbox? What spiritual resources have aided you before that you might call upon now? How, in responding to life's natural ups and downs, disappointments and losses, have you been unknowingly preparing for this moment, this strange moment of uncertainty and vulnerability? Backpacking is one of my great joys. And something I find particularly satisfying when out in the mountains is feeling that I packed well for a trip. Enough calories and food for each day, with a few treats to lift my spirits when the hills are hard. Band-aids, clothes to meet the changing conditions, paper and pen to record my thoughts. And so when I'm hiking and the miles start to become a slog, or there's a blister that's forming or an ache that is just dominating my attention, I pause and I speak out loud gratitude for all that is aiding me in that moment. And then I pause to reconnect with my senses and feel what is most immediately true. Notice it in my body and in my environment. The pain, yes, the exhaustion, the boredom, but also the sight of hemlock roots weaving down into the earth, or the smell of cedar, and the feeling of aliveness that is available if I just pay attention the wind on my skin. Gratitude has become an essential practice for me in these days of worry and overwhelm. Gratitude for the privileges and joys of home, hearth, health, friendship, kindness, and humor. Thank God for humor, and thank God for spontaneous dance parties. Gratitude that my partner somehow had the prescience 2 months ago to buy that bidet we've been talking about. I mean, who knew? Who knew we'd be entering into a toilet paper shortage? Gratitude that I ordered a book for pastors this past winter entitled How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going. And gratitude for the earth awakening to spring, for the sound of the falling rain last night, and the sweet warmth of sunlight when it visits us. Now, this is not to sugarcoat our current predicament or to dismiss the gravity of what is happening and what might come to pass. People are falling gravely ill, and some are dying. People are losing loved ones. However, I also know that gratitude is one of those spiritual practices that can expand my perspective. It can expand the frame of awareness and serve to quell those inner storms of fear and uncertainty, and even invite joy. When I speak to colleagues about University Unitarian Church, this community, I often lift up and even brag about how this is a community that understands spiritual practice. Among you are meditators, mystics, yoginis, gardeners, poets, artists, dancers, those who are called to serve others, those who touch the earth with reverence, and so many who love to sing. And so I wonder right now, what practices are supporting you? What are you finding that can nurture your hope and help you to be within this difficult time and with difficult emotions? When have you gone through challenges before? And what has helped you to reconnect with yourself and to know that and to connect with that which you know as holy? Now is a moment when such practices become essential. They are tools for calming the nervous system, calming the body, opening the breath, and to listen for the hidden wholeness that is within life. The hidden wholeness that is even within these complicated times. Now I know also that many of you are carrying heavy burdens these days that might make spiritual practice feel attainable. You are home full-time, trying to work and trying to keep your children healthy and well and busy and happy at the same time. Maybe you're a healthcare provider and you're going in day after day. Thank you. Maybe this is a time in which the depression or the anxiety that has felt more manageable before suddenly is too much. And so please know that the love of this community is here for you, here to listen and support you. A grace that some might call God, some might call the spirit of life is with you and within you in those moments of greatest challenge. You are not alone, and there is no place where love cannot find you. I mentioned that now is a time of great paradox. I'm sure you've been feeling it in your own lives as well. It is a time in which, because we need to stay away from one another, distant from one another, It is a time of increased isolation and yet also interconnection, as the whole world over is experiencing something kindred, and we realize how deeply connected we are. It's this time of both rising fear and incredible compassion. That fear doesn't have to shut one down to one's own individual experience, but fear can actually be a gateway to compassion, to feeling what others are feeling in this world that is now feels so vulnerable. It is a time of scarcity and of all the sense of scarcity in grocery stores and real scarcity in our healthcare system. And yet I also see this time as this incredible generosity of people giving art, giving leadership and spiritual practices and groceries and love away with this abandon. Because why store it up? Now is the time. Now is when it is needed. And there's also the paradox of both grief and gratitude existing at the same time. This last week, there was an interview published with a grief expert, David Kessler, entitled, "That Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief." The interview lifts up the power of naming grief, both of the losses people are currently experiencing and the anticipatory grief that come with looking at an unsure and potentially frightening future. Something I have found myself grieving this last week has been in this transition from leading worship in the chapel, a familiar space, a sacred space, to preaching from my home this morning. Over the last 2 years, University Unitarian Church has been in great transition related to our building project, during which we worshiped in a community center and met in one another's homes and got to know one another in a different way. Looking back towards our own recent history together, we have already learned that the church is not the building. We have hung together through transition, and we have put our faith in a shared future that was unknown. The tools and spiritual lessons learned along the way will serve us still and are serving us as we learn new ways to be together, and as we learn again, how will we be the religious community we are called to be? But throughout all those Sundays of setting up hundreds of chairs in a gymnasium to worship and sing together, we always had our wooden chalice to light at the opening of service. And I am longing for that shared symbol, that shared sacred hearth. Across Unitarian Universalist congregations, worship gathers around the lighting of a chalice, a cup, and a flame. The origins of this symbol date back to another time in our not so distant past, when the world was in crisis and the future looked uncertain for many. During World War II, the Unitarian Service Committee had an office in Lisbon, Portugal. Lisbon, at the time, was the only open port in Europe in the early 1940s. And refugees fleeing Nazi persecution arrived there in droves, searching for safe passage. The Unitarian Service Committee, recently set up, aided refugees in resettlement, including creating the necessary documents for identification needed to immigrate. The Reverend Dr. Charles Joy, commissioner for the Unitarian Service Committee, asked an Austrian artist, Hans Deutsch, a refugee himself, to create a symbol to put as an official seal on those documents. In 1941, Deutsch created the symbol of the flaming chalice, the cup and the flame. It was creativity coming out of crisis, a symbol to remind us of our faith's history of love and action, and a symbol of sacrificial love and hope alive in a time of despair. Over the decades since, the ritual of lighting the chalice has become central to UU worship. It actually arrived into our congregations in the 1980s, fairly recently, after children and youth and religious education would bring it into the chapel for children's and youth services. I love when our faith has followed the wisdom and guidance of our youngest people. And so right now, as worship is happening at home, all across the continent, UU congregations are worshiping online, and chalices are being lit in mostly empty sanctuaries and in homes. It is now up to us to keep the chalice lit during these weeks of physical distancing and deep interconnection. It is up to us to keep the flame of hope and justice alive in our actions, our words, and our presence, and to continue to be the warmth of community for one another. The chalice light lives within in many ways, as well as in between. It is up to us to keep it burning. I'm going to close with an imagination, with a shared imagination. You can close your eyes if that would help you. And imagine that it is some unknown date in the future. The rate of infections has slowed down, and a vaccine has been developed and is being distributed worldwide. Lives were lost, and economies took a hit, but the worst was not realized because of the efforts, compassion, and leadership of many, many people. People are coming together again. Life is returning to a normal, although it is a new normal. Not exactly as it was, but we are together. You are reflecting back on this time of sheltering in place and rising infections. And you are thinking, reflecting on what helped you through that hard time. Who companioned you? And who did you companion? What did you learn? What did we collectively learn? And how did we keep the chalice lit? I close this morning with a quote from Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. close with these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for joining this morning from wherever you are. Thanks for being together as one community and moving through what is difficult and what is just kind of irritating, but doing it together. I hope that you'll join a conversation group following service. The links are on the webpage for a virtual coffee hour to check in with one another, and consider joining Jon or I, Deborah and Linda for morning daily chalice check-ins. There's a number of different ways to be connected to UUC's community right now. And know that we're here for you. We miss seeing you. Goodbye.